Boris Johnson will have a new Prime Minister installed this week. It's the fourth since you left office. Now, it strikes me that all your successors have had to deal in some way with your legacy. Ukraine, migration, Brexit. So let's take them one by one. What do you want to hear from Andy Burnham on Ukraine?
I want to hear that the UK government will not only stick with Ukraine, but will be even more resolute in support of Ukraine. Now, the problem we've got at the moment is that it sort of feels like the Ukrainians are doing better. And their drone technology, their bravery, they're scoring fantastic successes against the Russians. And by some counts, they're killing more Russians than Putin can recruit. They're killing 30,000 a month or whatever. And so there's in the Western media everywhere, there's a great deal of excitement about Ukraine's prospects. And I've got no doubt they are going to win.
You've been there in the not so recent past.
Yes, I have. I did I went to do an article for the Daily Mail, and they brilliantly took. I was sort of being taken by some fantastic male journalists who kind of sherped me like a sort of incompetent alpinist up the mountain, and they showed me the front line. They showed me this so-called kill zone. I have a real sense of what's going on. There's a film coming out about it. But what I really take away from it is that the Ukrainians are still under huge pressure. They have a big recruitment problem. The suffering of those people in those trenches, which I saw, which I think the Mail film will explain, it's terrible. And what we need to do, and so you ask about the new UK government or Andy Burnham or whatever, what we've got to do is get this thing over. And one of the reasons it isn't over is that Putin doesn't really know from the West what we want. And we won't declare that we really want Ukraine as part of the Western Committee of Nations, so a group of countries. So NATO, for instance, is the crucial thing. And as long as Putin thinks that there's that ambiguity, that's the fatal thing about Ukraine. So it's the doubt about the ultimate location of Ukraine in the security architecture of the world. And as long as Putin still thinks there's a chance he can keep Ukraine ambiguous, he'll keep attacking. So one of the ways to get the war over is for Washington, London, Paris, but everywhere to declare, again, what used to be the policy, which is that Ukraine should join NATO. Now, you don't hear that.
So you want the Western nations to say tomorrow that Ukraine should first of all be part of the NATO alliance. Putin. How Putin will respond to that.
Yeah, Putin will respond to that by doing a deal, because at the moment he has no reason to think that we're serious, and he will keep wanting to push Ukraine, keep wanting to carve Ukraine up until he hears that it's game over and that there's a long-term strategic objective by the West to have Ukraine as part of our group of nations.
Why would he take that declaration seriously?
That used to be.
Why would he take that declaration seriously? Because what you're really saying is that Starmer, Macron, Merz essentially haven't been as aggressive or strong or as supportive as they ought to have been.
I think we've made a mistake in not being clear about the final status of Ukraine, because I don't think that Putin will desist until he thinks it's really game over. And the logic from his point of view is, he's in trouble, right? I mean, he's obviously in trouble. But if he did a deal now, I think he could just about explain it to his people. He could say, well, the special military operation has succeeded. We've got rid of all the Nazis not that there were any Nazis, but we've got rid of the Nazis in Ukraine.
That was his accusation about Ukrainian leadership.
But we should do several other things, by the way, to support Ukraine. We could do much more with the Shadow Fleet.
Before you go on to that,
we don't do enough of that in the English Channel. We could do much more to fund Ukraine. There's about $15 billion worth of Putin's assets just in London alone.
But before you go on to that,
and we could unfreeze that and give that to Ukraine.
It's a very interesting proposition, because I haven't heard this before, that you're saying...
You used to hear it about 3.5 years ago.
When you were in office.
It's
one of the things that's changed since 3.5 years ago is Donald Trump. Are you saying that Trump, as well, has been weak, fallen down on the job, failed to press home the advantage that he should have had?
I mean, I make no secret of that. I think that it would be a very powerful thing. I've said this to President Trump. It'd be a very powerful thing if the United States declared that it was a strategic objective of the United States for Ukraine to be free, sovereign, and independent country. Number one, you don't hear that much from Washington, right? And number two, that Ukraine should be part of NATO.
And when you said that, what did he say to you when you said that to him?
Well, I mean, he's very good at listening. He's very good at listening. That used to be the policy, and it's not the policy. And I think it's a mistake. And I think it's one of the reasons this thing has dragged on, and is at risk of dragging on even further. Get it clear. What have we got to lose? You couldn't say Putin's going to escalate. I mean, how much more escalation can he do? He's bombing apartment blocks. He's trying to recruit as many people as he can. He's in a desperate hole. Escalation isn't the problem. What needs to happen is we need to flip the switch in his mind and convince him that geostrategically it's game over. He's tried. He's got to defend it now to his people, but he's got to end it.
Do you think that there is any possibility that Andy Burnham will stand up sometime this week or in his first foreign policy speech and say, you know what, I like what Keir Starmer's done, he's been dignified on the international stage, but he hasn't done the thing that needs to be done, which is to say to Vladimir Putin, we are going back to the Boris Johnson position.
It used to be the Keir Starmer position. It used to be the Keir Starmer, but it's sort of evaporated from the...
Do you think there's any possibility that Andy Burnham will take up that position now?
Well, I hope he will. Honestly, I don't know. I mean, you know, Trevor, you probably know much more about Andy's sort of foreign policy positions than I do. And you look at it, you're a font of information. I don't know. I hope he will.
An air of mystery has descended on the studio at that question.
But look, I think that he's an intelligent guy. I've had not very extensive, but basically warm relationship with him in the past. I can't believe he's going to, I can't believe he's going to jettison UK policy. I'm sure he'll want to do the right thing on Ukraine.
Let me ask you this. You spent a lot of time with Ukrainians. Zelensky clearly trusts you, and I think you're still in contact. Do you think he has felt betrayed by the West, and particularly by the Americans?
No, I don't think that. I don't think that at all. I think that he's occasionally very frustrated by some of the things that I've mentioned, the failure to sort out the Shadow Fleet, the failure to pony up the frozen assets, the failure to declare the long-term objective. But look, you talk to, I'm sure I know you do, you talk to those Ukrainian generals, they would not survive. They couldn't keep going for an hour in their fighting in the Donbass without American technical support, and American intelligence. It's fantastically important. And with a few hiccups, it has kept going throughout the Trump period. And, I think that paradoxically, Trump could be the guy ready to put the hard word on Putin and get this thing done. And there's no doubt that when it comes to foreign policy initiatives, this is a guy who's willing to do some pretty tough things, right? Nobody thought he's the first American president to use violence against Iran, right? Whatever you think about about his logic and how that's worked out, he is. I think he is the guy. And I've said this to him, and I said this repeatedly. I think paradoxically, although I think that his instincts on Ukraine haven't always, or his language about Ukraine hasn't always been, put it mildly, totally on all fours with what I think. I think he really could fix it, and that's what I've always told him.
There's some division in the Zelensky administration at the moment. Do you understand the justification for the sacking of what we're told is a popular defence minister?
No, and I can't speak for the Zelensky. I mean, you're kind to say I'm still sort of in the loop with those guys, but I can't speak for. I can't speak for them. I think
that might give the sense that there's disunity, and make the West, Europe, and also Washington a bit less keen to do what you want them to do.
Look, I think it's perfectly possible that the removal of the defence minister is nothing to do with so-called corruption or any of those allegations, and it's purely a dispute with the head of the armed forces, the head of the army, who's in a very difficult position, and it's just one of those things that happens. I think the protests, you could argue, the protests you're seeing in Ukraine are a sign that Ukraine is a functioning, open, a pluralist democracy, right? And a sign of the difference between Ukraine and Russia. So, look,
but of course
we've had controversial decisions like this.
But there are people who
before.
say that this is actually a signal both of Zelensky's weakness and also potentially his authoritarianism.
Well, I know people say that, but Ukraine is fundamentally different from Russia. In Ukraine, when they have elections, people genuinely don't know what the outcome of that election is going to be. In Russia, they know that Putin is going to win. In Ukraine, they don't shoot journalists. They don't send their opponents to gulags. They don't poison them. In Russia, they do. They jail thousands and thousands of people. There is that's why it's so important for us to make the point to Putin about where Ukraine is going. It's about direction, and we're making a mistake not to say it.
Let's talk about another part of your legacy, Brexit. It's 10 years since the referendum. The Bank of England says that a Conservative estimate shows that the United Kingdom economy is now 6% smaller than it would have been without Brexit. And that's let me finish. That would be easily enough to hand our friends in Ukraine several $100 million worth of support, and also meet our defence commitments. Are you yet ready to admit that this was a mistake?
No, not at all. I think that if the UK economy might have grown more, then it would have been by far the fastest growing economy in Europe. It would have been quite.
And wouldn't that have been great?
And so I don't think that is true. I think what has damaged the UK economy, as I think the Bank of England has repeatedly confirmed since 2024, when actually the outgoing Conservative government had got inflation down, got interest rates down, got taxation down as much as we could. The problem is that you've had a Labour government that has been absolutely remorseless.
Oh no! Come on!
Absolutely remorseless.
They're saying this is over the 10-year period.
Yeah, but if you look at the real period,
all of the bad stuff happened since 2024.
When did people really start fleeing this country? When did you start to see the wealth creators leaving this country in huge numbers? It's because of...
That's deflection.
It's not
over
deflection.
The 10 years, we didn't do any... We didn't improve our productivity.
In that case...
We didn't shrink the debt. Actually, some of that is on your watch.
Yeah, sorry. On my watch, let's not forget that for much of that 10 years, we didn't actually deliver Brexit at all. Okay? What happened then... shortly after we legally came out of the European Union and took back control of our economy and our laws, we had COVID. And actually, as I never tire of saying, but I will repeat because I probably haven't told you, Trevor, what actually happened was that thanks to Brexit, during that fateful year of 2021, when we had the vaccine rollout and we were trying to come out of the COVID restrictions, which was catastrophic for the economy. You talk about the economy. That was the biggest problem. How could you have any economic growth when you were closing the whole economy because of a disease, right? And it was because we had the freedom. But let me just finish this point. Because we had the freedom to roll out AstraZeneca and Moderna and Pfizer and all these vaccines literally weeks, if not months, faster than our closest competitors. The result was we had vaccinated 45% of the UK. I'm going to repeat this because you've asked. 45% of the UK population and 100% of the vulnerable people by March 2021.
I'm happy to
and the result was thanks to Brexit. You've been blaming Brexit.
I am happy to let you make the case. But I have heard that case. But I've asked you
about... Let me repeat it.
I've asked you about the economy. And the point I'm making...
telling you about the economy. We came out of COVID restrictions so fast, we had the fastest economic rebound in Europe, right?
Okay.
And that was thanks to Brexit.
And we would have grown faster without Brexit.
No, because we would have been unable to vaccinate our population as fast as we did, right? Okay, and so we would have been stuck behind with the rest. As don't forget, most other European countries, including France, including Germany, did not come out of COVID restrictions for 9 months after we did, right? Now that's a big economic disadvantage for them. A big Brexit advantage for us.
We could spend a great deal of time discussing why that is, but I want to move on to...
We could, but I don't think we'd come to a separate conclusion, because that is the answer.
On immigration...
And the problem with Brexit, obviously I love Brexit. Je suis Brexit. Voilà. You're never going to...
I know I'm going to shift your opinion.
What I do think about it is, Brexit is a tool, right? And you either use it or you don't.
And do you think we failed to use it properly?
I think that I think that it's starting to happen, and I think even Labour is actually interested in doing things differently. If you look at their approach to AI, it's different from the European approach on biosciences. We're now starting to diverge, in spite of some of the difficulties that they're making. So.
Okay.
I think give it time. The problem the UK economy has got, far bigger than any impediment that Brexit may or may not have provided. The problem the UK government has got is the massive over-taxation, over-regulation of the Labour government, which brought back 1970s style controls on hiring and firing of people. This is a huge economic rigidity, massively overtaxing people.
I get far enough criticism from your colleagues of Labour. I want to hear about you. I want to hear about your policies.
I think you're very balanced generally. I read your column in the Times, which is excellent.
Thank you.
You're a model. You're a model.
I want to come on.
Honestly, if you look at the damage being done,
could we move on
to this economy?
Could we move on to another part of
Labour policies? And Brexit is actually in the right hands. Brexit
Could we move on to another part of the Johnson legacy, of which they will no doubt write poems in centuries to come? Migration.
Yes?
Whoever turns out to be Andy Burnham's Home Secretary is going to have to deal with the consequences, which are both practical and political, of decisions that you took to open the doors to what in the end became a wave of net migration of knocking on 1 million. What people now call the Boris wave, and the consequence has been a surge. Let me finish the question so you can answer the question.
It's nonsense. It's nonsense. It
has been a surge for Nigel Farage. Was that a mistake?
First of all, the Reform Party, I can't remember whether they were even called that. Yeah, I think they were.
They were.
Yeah, they were on about 0% when I was Prime Minister, right? Okay, even when I resigned, they were on 0%.
We hadn't had the Boris wave yet when you were Prime Minister. We had the decisions, but we hadn't had the people arriving.
Sorry, that's nonsense. Then in that case, it was nothing to do with me because
the decision you took, which was to allow people to bring dependents and so on. The consequence
what happened
in 22, 23, 24, 25.
Two things happened. First of all, we had Brexit, we had COVID, right?
Right.
So what happened first of all? was that migration fell to its lowest level for 40 years. Okay, my first full year as Prime Minister, 2020, we had net migration in this country.
Nobody was
the
moving
lowest
anywhere because it was COVID.
Correct. Was the lowest for 40 years. If not, I think lowest.
That wasn't policy. That was a pandemic.
And so what happened the following year was we had an increase. What we then had was the ability, because of Brexit, to reduce that to zero if you want. And because, thanks to what we did, you asked the decision, you say, talk about the decisions I took. The most important decision I took, and the most difficult to deliver in the House of Commons, most of whose members voted against leaving the EU, the most important thing was to go for a so-called hard Brexit. Remember this?
I do.
And a hard Brexit meant that we came out of the single market, we came out of the customs union, and we were no longer party to EU arrangements on movement of people. And that was not something that was easy, because it was something that a lot of people thought would be very, very tricky for the economy, but it was essential to deliver Brexit. And it's a result of that control that we in this country, Labour government, any government, can now decide who comes in.
And it was a result
and they can,
that,
and not only that,
and
but,
it was a result
and not only
of
that, but we can decide.
We climbed to net migration of
wasn't
over 900,000 people.
So as I've tried to explain to you, we had very, very low migration one year. We then had more. We then after
we didn't have
left,
net migration of 900,000 people before COVID. This was a consequence of your decision. No, you don't have to be embarrassed about it. I'm just saying.
Actually, what happened was, if you talk to Kevin Foster, the former immigration minister, we took steps to change those rules so as to make it tougher for people to get in. But I just remind you what actually was happening at the time. People were saying, and nice, well-meaning liberal people were saying, Brexit is going to turn us into a leper colony, and people are going to flee the UK. And I think that, and I actually think that sort of rhetoric was taken seriously by Whitehall. You have a lot of good, nice Remain civil servants, and I think that they thought that we did need to get people in to do social care and to do things like that. And but as soon as we realised the numbers, we used our powers, our legal powers, to turn it off. And if I had a complaint, it was after I'd left office. That wasn't done fast enough. You've also got to ask yourself when you look at immigration into this country. And you know, I'm in favour of control, right? I'm not actually anti-immigrants. I think I'm lucky that my own family was allowed to immigrate to this country, or parts of my family were allowed to immigrate years ago. But I think what people want to see is full, legal, democratic accountability, and that's what they have now. That is what they have now got. And they didn't. And so when Andy Burnham says he wants to go closer to the European Union or whatever sort of income, whatever he's saying now, when he says he wants to have a new relationship or a reset, what they want is a return to free movement. They'll start with students and all that nonsense, and then it'll become absolutely unstoppable. And what the Remainers or the Rejoiners.
I know. Okay. I don't want to relitigate the past. I want to talk about things for which you were responsible. Look,
sadly, that's all in the past.
No. We are living with the consequences of the past. You're a historian. Right. You know this. Yeah. You know how this works. The point I really just want to ask is this. It's a kind of it is a serious point, really. You do have a view about immigration. You have said in the past you think, broadly speaking, it's a good thing. It's got to be controlled.
Well, there's got to be controlled. I used to run this city, right? I know for 8 years, 8 glorious years.
I know that. Let me ask you a question.
In that period,
let me ask you a question before you.
The statistic I used to cite was that 40% of our population was born abroad, right?
Yeah.
And in that respect, London is identical. So all these raving in America about civilizational erasure, Britain's going down the tubes.
Are we talking about J.D. Vance?
Well, whoever, but all this bollocks. The population of New York that was born abroad is virtually identical. I think in America, about 30% of people are either first or 30% of the population of America is first or second generation immigrant, and we have to listen to this stuff about civilization erasure.
I have to move on.
And break.
I
think there are problems. So
I'm trying to get to ask you a question. And the question I want to ask you is this. No, don't tell me. Answer this question.
Okay, sure.
Are you at all embarrassed by the way that Reform and others are using the term Boris wave? Because it is true that net migration, for better or worse, has been higher as a consequence of decisions you took than at any time in our history.
I think it would be I just pointed out that because of Brexit, we have the power to control migration, and if necessary, to have zero migration. And not only to have zero, but we have the power under Brexit. Under Brexit, which I secured and which those people didn't. They didn't even exist. They did not have a single MP. Those people, right? They didn't do a bean. They did not do a bean to get Brexit through the House of Commons. Not a bean. And they swank around claiming to have been responsible for it. They did nothing to deliver Brexit, the hard Brexit, through the House of Commons, which enables this country not only to have as few people as we want overall, but also under our laws to decide who comes from where. Now the problem with migration is not. I need to move you on because at the moment they're going to throw us out of the studio. That's okay. I'm just going to finish this point. The problem. As I told you, Trevor, I'm a generous-minded sort of guy. I'm not going to discriminate against people because of where they come from. What I do think they need to do is be British. And you've written. I've read good pieces by you on this, and you're right. I think that over decades, we've been far too limp-wristed in insisting that people conform to our ideals, norms of our society.
Give me an example of what you
I think things like this. I think a lot of the stuff that people have been hearing about. I think a lot of the, relations between the sexes. We should have
treatment of women.
Yeah, the grooming gangs, all this sort of stuff. We haven't been tough enough in insisting on basic British norms of behaviour. And I think if you come to this country, and I used to have these wonderful ceremonies in City Hall, people would cry from all over backgrounds all over the world. They would be photographed with Her Majesty, Her late Majesty the Queen, and it was the most magical moment in their lives. And they swore, and they passed quite a difficult test about British culture and so on.
The UK
we need to be tougher on that. And I think that a lot of political correctness has prevented that.
What would you do with people who you think, people use the word integration, let's use that for the sake of convenience here, who are not playing by the rules, who are not doing what you've just talked about? What would you do with them?
I would shame them. I would make it clear that their behaviour. So look,
would you expel them from the country?
Well, that's hard to do if they have legal rights to live here. But I think it is totally unacceptable that you should have populations of women who don't speak English. That's absolutely appalling.
All right.
And things have been actually, in some ways, things have been improving. But I think. In terms of cultural norms, when my Turkish great-grandfather came to Wimbledon, he was assassinated shortly thereafter, but never mind. When he came to Wimbledon, he decided that his progeny should be British. He wasn't assassinated in this country. And whatever you may say, whatever complaints you may make about my family, we've made a pretty good effort to speak English.
Much as I'd love to go through the family history, I want to talk to you about a couple of other things, which, to be honest, only you could really talk to us about. There's going to be a new Prime Minister on Monday. Says he wants to do things differently. He says that politics hasn't served the people. And some of the language he's using echoes your levelling up agenda. What do you think that the first thing he needs to do is?
Well, look, I wish him well as a new Prime Minister. I think we've had quite a lot now, and it's just like the population's doom scroll through Prime Ministers.
We've had 10 Prime Ministers.
Yeah, I think
in the last since
but
Brexit,
he hasn't got much time. I would say. And he needs to get on and he needs to give investors in this country a sense of hope about it. And that means he needs to find reasons to buy British, buy Britain, get stuck in, and he needs to stop the hemorrhage of talent. And he needs to think about what he's doing on tax, and Labour needs to get a grip on spending. And the problem they've got is even though they have a huge majority, they're unable to deliver any real change, reform of the public spending package because of the mindset of Labour backbenchers. They need, in order to keep the markets at bay, in order to keep the bond markets at bay, they keep having to talk about raising taxes because that reassures them about the markets about debt and so on, and that's a massively negative signal to investors. And by the way, a nightmare for everybody who keeps having to pay. We keep having to pay more tax. So they are in a huge mess, Labour.
And
they've made a huge mess, as I was saying.
So get control of public finances.
And he needs to fix that. I think he needs to show some leadership on something like on Ukraine. One of the problems we've got now is that because of the sort of lawyerly approach, I love lawyers, but the very, very left-wing legalistic approach of Hermer, the former the Attorney General, when he's still there, and Starmer, is that we're seen now as very weak. Things like Chagos, disastrous. There was no real legal justification for what they did. This stuff at Gibraltar, pathetic. You don't need to do that. So I do worry. Okay. I do worry about the way we're now thought of. If I were Andy Burnham, I would really try to show that there was a new. It wasn't just. There was no longer the rule of Islington lawyers. It's no longer the rule of Islington lawyers, but if he wants to speak for the whole country again, then he needs to think where the instincts of those people are, and they are not. They're patriotic. They do not want to see Britain weak.
I want to ask you a couple of things, if you like, as an elder statesperson in politics. You and your family now live with extensive security.
Statesperson.
We're speaking in the shadow of the murder of Anne Widdecombe.
You say statesperson normally, and I'm not against the phrase, the word. Are we states?
Let's not quibble about language. We could spend. We've already spent too long on this. We're speaking in the shadow of the murder of Anne Widdecombe. Nigel Farage reports hundreds of death threats. Do you think that there's a danger that public office is now so dangerous that it rules out many people who would otherwise be outstanding public servants, but who don't want to put their families or themselves at risk?
I really hope that isn't true. I think that it probably isn't true because I think that the risks, although they obviously exist, remain very, very, very low. What I think is true is that probably in my lifetime, in my political sort of career, it has become more rebarbative, right? I think people are more verbally aggressive with each other. Don't you feel? I feel it's got a bit coarser, a bit rougher. And that might put people off, and they might not want their kids shouted at, that sort of thing, right? And so what I think about all this is that actually it's probably expensive and pointless to try and raise everybody's level of security. But what we could do is dial down the general level of invective, and sort of, Am I onto something? I'm
sure people could be more...
I tell you who I thought. Okay. I thought, I think she's been an appalling chancellor, but I thought Rachel Reeves was very good at that petrol station when she stood up to someone. Maybe you disagree.
And somebody shouted at her.
I thought she was great. I thought she was great. And I think that you've got to take it in your stride.
There's another angle to this, which I've got to put to you, really. Some people would say that you bear some responsibility for the coarsening of politics, or the decline in the reputation of politics.
Have I ever abused anybody? What do you mean?
Let me finish my question. Let me finish my question before you ask yourself the question. Parties at number 10. So suspicious dealings over PPE, failure to clamp down on disreputable behaviour and backbenchers. Some people would say a lot of this is Johnson.
Bollocks. No, I don't believe anybody would say that in their right mind. You know what I think about the
I could bring you pages and pages of it.
Yeah, because people write any old nonsense. But you know what I think about the so-called Partygate nonsense. It was nonsense. As for PPE, I mean, actually, I think I'm right in saying that the COVID inquiry, Dame Heather Hallett has just produced a finding. I mean, I might be wrong, saying that there was no cronyism or whatever.
What she said, she could not find any evidence of it.
Well, I don't think, nor could I.
But she also said, by the way, there shouldn't have been a VIP lane. I don't want to get into the detail, but my point is...
But are you sorry?
I'm just asking a straightforward question. Truly, you don't feel any responsibility for any of that?
No, but I think I'm a very mild-mannered guy, and I don't think that I'm...
all right.
I think, generally speaking, I think that what happens in these situations is that the left blame the right and the right blame the left. And everyone says, if the right-wingers weren't so awful, then none of this would happen. If the left and the right-wingers say, well, if the left-wingers weren't so nasty, then everybody just needs to take a chill pill, I think.
I just want to say one.
I remember when things were. I mean, what I would say is that, and I think this would be fair. I think that referendums, and particularly referendum on an issue of identity, as it turned out to be, which was the Brexit referendum, I think that did cause much more rancour than people thought it would. And that was a sad thing.
Do you feel sorry about that?
Well, I didn't call the referendum. I mean, I took part in it. But yeah, I do feel sorry about it. And I've said that. I said it on some BBC show. I don't know whether they used it. I think it was regrettable that it became so. I think it was because the issues were so sort of abstruse, and the constitutional issues, that sometimes people found it easier just to get involved in the personal argy-bargy. But we're a very. George Orwell was right. We're a very gentle country. We're a very gentle country.
I'm going to edit the next 20 seconds, which is, we should have been talking for 20 minutes or thereabout. We're now at 40 minutes, so I need to move you on.
Sorry.
As much fun as this is, I need to move you on a bit.
I think any remaining viewers will be...
they'll still be there. I want to keep asking you about this. Listen, the Conservative Party is not contesting, unusually, a by-election, the one in Clacton in August. If you agree with that decision, who do you actually want to win that? Farage or Binface?
I think it would be. I think it would be a very bad idea for me to blight any candidate with my support. To say, I think that obviously I don't agree with what Reform are saying about a lot of things. I think the trouble is that I don't see their programme for the country. I don't see their programme for the economy. I don't see the need for this by-election, to be perfectly honest.
So you wouldn't be an honest broker, by the way, between the Conservative Party and Reform Party?
I think that it's been a very peculiar by-election, and it shouldn't be happening. And I thought Binface had rather a good point when he said that all I would say is this: I thought Binface had a decent point, the Count Binface, when he said that a vote for him would actually preclude the expense of a second by-election. So I just put it out there. That's a reasonable
quick
point.
Question on this. There are some people in the Conservative Party who think that there should be a deal between the Tories and Reform, whether or not.
Not me.
And actually, there might be a broker who's credible with both parties who could do that.
I'm.
No deal would be better than a bad deal.
No Conservative leader can possibly engage in talks about a deal because you're not going to do any good for your own party. You're not going to boost Tory chances by going around talking about some sort of surgical cosmetic enhancement of your own party by by creating some Franken party of the right.
All
that
right.
is not going to work. That is not going to work. And actually, if you look at what's happening, Kemi Badenoch is coming back very, very strongly, coming through very strongly now. I think she's the only party leader to have net approval ratings, positive approval ratings.
Well, Andy Burnham now is, but I get the point.
Well, maybe. Well, does she? Does he? I'm not so. I think she.
I think maybe she's the only one positive. But anyway.
And that's an amazing thing, because that is a measure that leads the numbers for the parties overall. So watch this space.
We must finish now, or else they are going to sack. They are going to sack me.
Have we really done 40 minutes?
More than that.
You can't broadcast that. What are you going to do?
No, we're going to take over the station. Listen, I actually.
Is this your penultimate show?
No, I genuinely want to ask.
I think if it's your penultimate show, you could just demand that they broadcast you in full.
Yeah, Boris Johnson says, give the channel to Trevor Phillips. I just want to ask you, this is personal in a way.
Why are you going to America? What are you doing?
This isn't. I'm interviewing you, for God's sake. Let's just get to the end of this, then we can talk about me. 7 of the last 10 prime ministers have essentially been turfed out of office.
Political careers.
Not all. I know the Powell thing, but not all of them have. Some have lost elections. Now, you and Starmer both led your parties to big victories, and then they got rid of you. It must be impossible not to feel at least a little bitter about that. So what advice would you give to Keir Starmer to deal with that bitterness?
I give the same advice that the late Majesty, the Queen, gave me, which was there's absolutely no point in bitterness ever about these things. And it's a very good piece of advice.
Is that what she said?
Really? Yes, she was. I think I've said that before. If
I haven't heard it, but she said that to you after.
I don't think I'm betraying any particular confidence, but she said that. Yeah, she did, and I mean, you can see why, from the monarch's point of view, that's the right thing for the country. You know, you don't want politicians feuding endlessly with other politicians once they've left office, but it's also the right thing personally for your own spiritual health and growth. You know?
So that's a rather touching sentiment.
Well, I think she's totally right. I mean, I think, don't we all know it? I mean, so I'm sure, look, I think I did feel a bit sorry for Keir sometimes. And, sometimes I couldn't quite understand why he was so unbelievably unpopular. I mean, I could see he was doing a lot of terrible things, but I couldn't, when I talked to him, I couldn't see, personally, he didn't strike me as being a bad guy, really. I mean, he's totally misguided. He's a hopeless lefty lawyer. He does lots of terrible things. He was, a human bollard and all the rest of it.
He didn't say he felt that way when they got rid of you.
No, that's true. But but it was his job to get rid of me. Or his job to play it. But
when we say get rid of you, last point really. When you stepped down as Prime Minister 4 years ago, I looked up what you said, and you said you were like one of those booster rockets that has fulfilled his function. I will now be gently re-entering the atmosphere, and like Cincinnatus, I am returning to my plough. Now, these days, let me finish. These days, Elon Musk is reusing his rockets, and as you and I both know, Cincinnatus took his hand off the plough to come back. Not once, but probably twice, to lead the Republic. When are you going to come back?
No, honestly, Trevor, I think that I've had a very, very lucky time in politics. I got on, in spite of what you may say and what people may think. I got a huge amount done in 3 years as PM. I had a wonderful time as Mayor of London. I even quite enjoyed being Foreign Secretary. That was, I was mainly being sent abroad all the time. I think you can't step in, as Heraclitus said, you can't step in the same river twice. I think it was Heraclitus, I can't remember who it was. It was. And so I think that Kemi is doing very well. She really is. And she's got zap, she's got energy, she's getting better and better. People are waking up to this. And I think, I've got plenty. I mean, I've got a lot of fish to fry.
And we'll have at least a couple of years of Andy Burnham Do you expect him to succeed?
I expect him to succeed Keir Starmer, yes.
No. To do well.
That seems almost impossible to stop. That's as far as I'll go.
Boris Johnson, thank you very much.
Not at all.